Hello everyone, my name is Rafal and I would like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I would like to talk a little bit about lighting for headshot photography. But today I'm going to take completely different approach because I deeply believe that a lot of photographers out there look at the lighting from much smaller perspective, and I'm going to unfold how this process look like, and I'm going to share with you how to even deal with lighting. So let me start with saying that there's two parts of lighting when it comes to setting this whole thing up and making sure this whole thing's gonna work. I'm quite often getting nice compliments from a lot of you guys, which I'm truly appreciated, that my lighting has this really unique feel. It's really soft, it's kind of perfect, which I don't like this word because I don't believe that there's perfect light. There's always some deficiency, there's some issues with it, but I'm able to manage the lighting the way that at the end of this process, I'm getting the results what I'm looking for. So let me start with saying that there's two parts of dealing with lighting. First one is the technical part, which is what kind of light you're using, what kind of softboxes you're using, how you set this whole thing up, what's the settings of the light. There's some ratios and all this stuff, which I'm going to explain to you. This is not as important as people think. And there's the second portion, which is quite often missed by photographers and nobody actually talk about it. And I'm talking about the editing process, where we can shape the light, where we can alternate the light, where we can change the color, we can change the softness, we can literally change and adjust everything. And that's something that a lot of photographers don't focus on, and they miss that part, and they believe that if you set up the light specific way and you have specific settings, you're gonna get this amazing results. This is really far from the truth, and to be honest, I believed that for so many years till I realized this process is much more complex and there's a little bit more into it, and we have to understand the entire path, how to modify and how to mold our light to get great results. So let me start with the technical part. So in my case, I'm using three lighting setup. There's a main light, there's a kicker light, and there's also background light. I'm not gonna go into specifics. You guys can go to my social media platforms, and I'm sharing this pretty much on the daily basis, so you can exactly see what type of lights I'm using, what kind of softboxes I'm using, how this whole thing is set it up, and how this whole thing works. But having said that, we have to understand that this technical part only can get us to the certain point, and then we have to take it from there, and we have to work on this light even more to shape it to the standards and the quality we're looking for. And that's what I want to focus on, because I've noticed that there's a lot of videos out there, there's a lot of tutorials out there, and they talk about lighting and they talk about this technical part, but nobody talks how you can actually shape this light in post-production. And this is something which is crucial, and that's where you can really create this amazing effect, and you can really make your light look spectacular and very unique and very nice. So let's jump into the second part. As I mentioned, if you want to know a little bit more about the technical part, you know where to find it. And if you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to share those informations with you. I don't hide any of those things, even though I believe this is not as important as people think. And this is just the first step, which kind of gives you just the foundation, what you can do with your image. So let's jump into the second portion, which is editing, and I'm going to show you what exactly you can do. So the first thing when it comes to this second portion of dealing with lighting is working with your raw file. Raw file allows you to really adjust some of those things which you've created with your life. So for example, if you screw up your tonality of your image, you can actually adjust it. You can create a specific tonality of your image to make sure the white balance is right. So this is something extremely important, because a lot of photographers out there who are shooting with different type of lighting, they might have issue to balance it out and find the proper white balance, you don't really have to worry about it because you can really adjust this and you can change that. The next thing is you can also work with your exposure. So if your image is too dark or is a little bit too bright, you can bring the exposure to the right level. So how this whole thing is related to lighting, because if your light is not set up to the right power, the image might be too dark and you can adjust it. So you don't really have to worry about it. Back in the days when people shoot film, they didn't have that ability. Nowadays, you can really adjust that lighting to make sure everything looks the way it's supposed to. The next thing, which is also extremely important, is the fact that let's say your light is not properly set up and creates too much shadows on your subject face. You can bring those shadows back. You can open them up and you can really work with them to adjust those shadows to make sure they are at the level which you're happy with. So again, you can really mold the light and you can really work on some of those areas which they're, let's say, too dark and their shadows are too harsh. You can, as I said, open them up and you can make them look really, really good. The same thing when it comes to the whites on your image. If you have specific hotspots which you want to really bring to attention, you want to create this amazing contrast for the image, you can definitely do that. If their hotspots are too hot, you can bring them back. So again, you have full control over your lighting and you can really manipulate it and adjust it the way you can create the image you're looking for. The same with the blacks on your image. If the image is, let's say, overexposed and let's say your background is overexposed, you can bring that brightness down and you can really create the image with the lighting you're happy with. So that's the first part of manipulating your lighting and working with your image to create this really unique and distinctive light for your headshots. The next step is, of course, the retouching itself. So let's jump into it and see what we can do with the lighting. Okay, so this is our raw image, which was a little bit adjusted. So as you probably can see, I added a little bit of highlights, so the image has a little bit more contrast, has a little bit more dimension, and that's our starting point to take that image to the next level. So the first thing, to polish your light, I'm using dodge and burn technique. So as you probably can see on the image, and when you take a closer look, you can see that, for example, there is some really harsh shadow underneath her eyes. Even though I had a reflector, that didn't push enough light underneath her eyes to fill up some of those gaps. So in this case, as you probably can see, she's fairly young. She's got a really healthy skin and it's much easier to work with that type of skin, and the light works a little bit, I would say, nicer. But if you have someone who is older, has some wrinkles, have some discolorations on the skin, you can really see that, and the light's gonna bring that to the surface, and you have to deal with this because you have to polish this light to make it look soft, looks clean, and also make your image look like it's really nicely lit. So my favorite technique for cleaning some of those things is dodge and burn technique. Everyone probably knows about this technique. It's fairly available on YouTube. There's a million videos which they show you exactly all the steps how to do it. And let me show you how much drastic change that made to your image and to your lighting. So this is before, this is after. You see this whole image looks much more softer. The skin looks much nicer. It looks like the light is extremely soft, penetrates all those little areas on the skin, makes the skin looks really flawless, and makes the lighting, as I said, more efficient and looks more soft, which gets in every corner of their face and make this whole thing looks really smooth and nice. So that's the first step. The next step is the eyes. As you probably also can see in this particular image, in my opinion, her eyes are a little bit too dark, even though my softbox was fairly close, and I also had reflector, which you can really see the reflection in her eyes. But the eyes are the main story of every headshot, and we want to make sure that the eyes are a little bit more brighter. and the eyes really pop on the image. So again, I use dodge and burn technique to bring those eyes a little bit more brightness and make them pop on the image, which also gonna create this really unique attraction to the person's eyes. So if someone's gonna look at the image, their eyes and their connection gonna go straight to their eyes. And I exaggerated this whole thing a little bit in this case just to show you that regular lighting, and it doesn't matter how good the lighting you might have, you're not going to be able to do that. You have to do this in post-production, and you have to bring that brightness to life through dodge and burn technique, which gonna really make the lighting looks amazing. The next step, which is also extremely important, is the tonality of the image. The lighting itself, I don't think you're able to do that. You might use some gels, you might use some different things, but I have to say that the best tonality to your image you can bring through retouching process, because you can really change the color of the skin. You can remove, let's say in this case, we remove a little bit more redness, we removed a little bit more yellowish color to give this skin specific color. And that's also couldn't be done with the lighting. You have to do it in post-production. I think seeing the image on the screen and making the image have this specific tonality and specific skin color, it's always a benefit, and you can really push it directions you really like. And again, I deeply believe that you're not really able to do that through just adjusting white balance of your light or just manipulating the color of your light. You have to do it in post-production. And the next thing what I want to talk about it, this is extremely important. This is something which a lot of photographers, I don't know, they know about it, but you can also change direction of the light, where you can create this illusion that the light is hitting the person's face in a specific spot. So in our case, we want to make sure that the focal point of our image is your subject eyes. And it's called contouring. So I basically increase the highlights and I also increase the shadows to create this illusion that whoever's going to be looking at the image, the focal point become the person's face close to their eyes. So this is just the process how it's look like. And then when I actually reduce this whole thing, the whole focal point becoming on the person's face and on her eyes. So let me turn it on. So as you probably can see, her eyes are fairly dark at this point. There is some highlight on her forehead, but we want to switch this and shift this towards her eyes. So that's what we've done here. And again, there is no way you can do it with any softbox, with any type of lighting. Doesn't matter how expensive it is. You have to do it in post-production and make sure that this whole thing looks natural, but at the same time creates, as I said, this illusion that the light is hitting her straight into her eyes. And also what we can do in this case, I actually changed the color of the background. I could use gel, I could basically just add some color to it. But again, you can do that in post-production. So you don't have to play with specific colors, do all this crazy stuff to get specific color. You can do it in post-production and you can get this really natural, interesting, vibrant color to the background to take these headshots to the completely different level. And some of those things here are a little bit exaggerated just to show you what I'm able to do with lighting and how I can polish it, how I can shape it, and how I can change this whole thing to a completely different level. So again, let's take a quick look. That was the starting point. So fairly basic. There's a lot of things on her face going on. The light looks a little bit harsh. There's a lot of discolorations which came out throughout the using the lighting, and we had to polish this up and we have to just reshape the lighting to get this specific effect, and that's the final image. So what I'm trying to say here is not the fact that I'm telling that the lighting and the technical part is not important. What I'm trying to say is the fact that you can really modify your light. You can really reshape it. You can work with different tonalities and colors, and you can just give this light this really nice and soft look. I hope that was interesting. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about it and we can have a longer discussion. But The main point of this video, what I'm trying to say, is that there's two sides of the story. There's technical side, and there's also the retouching part of the shaping the light. And whenever you're going to be creating the lighting for your images, you just have to look at this whole thing from much broader perspective, and you can see where you can take this lighting and how you can make it look even better. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned, and I'll chat with you guys very soon. Bye bye.